Unit 29, Generalists and Specialists. The administration of any country requires different categories of personnel to carry out its functions. The personnel ought to have the necessary knowledge, skills and qualities to be able to perform the various administrative functions. There are horizontal and vertical divisions in administration. The horizontal divisions are marked according to the territorial or regional levels at which the personnel are located. The vertical divisions, on the other hand, are demarcated according to the functions or tasks allotted to the employee or their groups. The vertical divisions are further conceived to belong to the generalist and the specialist categories. These are not as such formally defined categories. Functions and tasks are just the basic units of the classification of categorization of the administrative personnel in government. In this unit, we will discuss about the functions of the generalists and specialists, nature of their relationship and its impact on administration. The Administrative Reforms Commission's recommendations to improve the relationship between the two will also be dealt with. Generalists and specialists, meaning a generalist is considered an administrator with no technical or specialist qualifications. In India, a member belonging to Indian Administrative Service as well as member of administrative services in Britain is a generalist. A generalist entrants to the civil service would have graduated past BA, BSc, BCom, BTech and B or MBBS in literature or history or social sciences or physical or biological sciences or mathematics or commerce or accountancy or a technical subject like engineering or medicine. On the strength of his or her subject at graduation, which may be different from the specialization needed for job offered, he or she is not fit to be posted in a particular department engaged in performing specific functions such as agriculture, health, social service, etc. The posting of a generalist civil servant in a department or at a regional level of administration has nothing to do with the subject of his or her education or of further training or administrative experience. His or her selection to the civil service through a competitive examination open to all graduates in any discipline such as arts, social sciences, commerce, engineering, technology, medicine is adequate to entitle him or her to occupy a position in a department or at a regional level such as district or division or a group of districts or in the secretariat. A generalist usually performs the POSD CORB functions: planning, organizing, supervising, directing, coordinating, reporting and budgeting. A specialist is an expert who is confined within a specialized area or department and occupies the technical position in administrative hierarchy. They are entrusted with the task of providing technical advice to the generalist administrator. Specialists are those civil servants who have acquired proficiency in terms of their education and experience in administration of specific subjects. They include medical, doctors, engineers, scientists, etc. Generalists are selected in administration on the basis of their having obtained a university degree irrespective of the subject at it. They are selected, unlike the specialists, for having reached a certain level of education per se, indicating the essential minimum extent of intellectual and mental development. The generalists are not chosen in administration for their proficiency in a particular discipline or branch of study or for further training or experience in that branch. It is said that administration per se becomes a matter of specialization of the generalists. In any department or the government secretariat or any other administrative institution such as public enterprise or a university or a local body. As one goes higher and higher in the level of responsibility, say from the clerk to the superintendent to the officer in charge of an office and further to the executive officer leading to the secretary of a department of ministry, functions become more and more generalist in nature. Even in technical or functional departments, such as irrigation and power, agriculture, medicine, and health. The secretary to the departments and the head of the executive department performs the generalist functions of policy making, control of administrative machinery, direction, supervision, and control of the employees, coordination within and outside the organization under control, and public relations. The technical or functional departments are no doubt suffused with the substantial content of the subject matter of their respective departments. In modern times, the functions of administration have become varied and complex. The states, besides maintaining law and order and looking after regulatory functions, is engaged in multifarious economic and welfare functions. The state has been entrusted with the task of setting basic industries like steel, mining, and heavy electricals. The state also looks after the welfare of the physically challenged, the health of the infirm, the old, and the children. Not merely that, the production of nuclear energy, conducting scientific research, and introduction of innovations in technology are a must for the modern state. In a country like India, where the peasantry forms the bulk of the population besides the above mentioned functions, the state is also concerned with assisting them with finances, technical information, and other inputs. Literacy rate is very low in the country. All this has cast heavy responsibilities on the government. The functions of administration have become enormous, varied, and complex. This tendency has been visible in the West, especially after the First World War, and in India after independence. To take care of the diverse functions in a welfare state, specialists are appointed in administration in growing numbers at various levels and in different departments and ministries. A specialist is a person who has special knowledge in a specific field. To systematize the working of the specialists in administration, they are recruited in cadres, that is, group of public services like engineers, medicos, statisticians, agricultural scientists, computer scientists, etc. The number of generalist administrators at supervisory or directional level has not grown to the extent to which the number of specialist officials with higher responsibility has increased. Clerks, typists, stenographers, accounts clerks, etc. are appointed in all departments at all territorial levels, but they do not perform duties of direction, supervision, control, coordination, and public relations, which are the managerial functions of an administrator. So, these employees or officials with lesser and routine responsibilities are left out in the discussion on the roles of the generalists and the specialists here. Specialists are also posted as advisors, special administrative assistants, and researchers to the chief executive, viz., Prime Minister, Chief Minister, or City Mayor. Here they operate as a staff agency and not as a line agency. In line agencies like that is departments or public enterprises, also specialists like the lawyers or statisticians assist the administration. Relationship between the generalists and specialists. The system of administration in India, which has largely been generalist dominated, has been due to the impact of administrative philosophy of England during 19th century, where generalists formed the basic principle of administration. Later, the Trevelyan Report on the Organization of Permanent Civil Service 1854 and the Macaulay Report on the Indian Civil Services 1854 also favored the generalist dominated administration. This continued even after independence also. The issue of the relationship between the generalists and the specialists has come to the fore on account of various factors. In the first place, they are organized in separate hierarchies, that is, groups having supervisors, subordinate relations between various levels. That is why the generalists and the specialists have lost contract with each other, and they look to each other with a kind of envy and suspicion. In the second place, the task of policy making, control of administrative machinery, and management at levels are allotted largely to the generalists in preference to the specialists. Excluding few exceptions, in the third place, generalists are moved from one department to another, from one type of job to another, from a department to public enterprise or local government and back without hindrance. The specialists, on the other hand, are transferred or promoted with their respective departments. These contrasting situations have given rise to a feeling among the generalists of being administrators per se and par excellence, and an inferiority complex and a feeling of being neglected among the specialists. Posts of secretaries in the government departments and even of the head of the most executive departments are reserved for the generalists. There are also salary differences in favor of the generalists. This privileged position of the generalists tend to offend the self-image of the specialists and in result their morale and confidence. The generalists and specialists also function in the private sector, industries and businesses, but their relations do not suffer from bitterness or envy. As in public administration, this is so because in private administration, specialists like engineers, accountants also occupy managerial and executive positions. In India, gradually the basis of liberal university education in arts, including social science and sciences for the recruitment to the civil services, has been broadened to include graduates in engineering, medicine, and technology. So, the old Macaulayan premise of liberal education based university graduates as flowers of the earth being the most suitable for selection as civil servants does not hold good in India today. The members of Indian Administrative Service occupy higher posts in various departments, both in the field and the secretariat, except those which are too technical, that is, specialists are occupied by the members of central services. Apart from the central services, which are included among the specialist services, scientists, legalists, engineers, economists, and other cadres are also termed specialists. The IAS incumbents, like those in the Indian Police Service and Indian Forest Service, are posted in state administration as well as in the central administration. But strictly speaking, members of the IPS and Indian IFS are not generalists. The IAS is really considered the only genuine generalist civil service in India. The members of the IAS began their career in a state administration as an assistant collector, commissioner, and rise to hold headship of an executive department like agriculture, social welfare, sales tax, etc., and secretaryship of a department in the state secretariat. After a stint of 10 years or so in the state administration, some of the IAS civil servants are transferred to the central secretariat and in some cases finally elevated to secretaryship of a department ministry there. Some of these are again deputed at times to the central public enterprises as managing directors or chairmen, but this trend is diminishing in recent times. Specialists occupy different positions in their own departments, in the field and the secretariat. A few of them rise to the secretaryship of the respective department. What is shared here about the specialists in the central administration applies to those in the state administration. Arguments in favor of the generalists. Traditionally, the Indian IPS have been structured on British pattern of division of services into the higher administrative class and other subordinate technical services. The origin of such dichotomy can be traced to the famous Narcote-Trevelyan report on organization of permanent civil service 1853. The report recommended that the superior posts in the administration should be filled with educated and promising young men by a competitive examination. This administrative class, recruited on the basis of literary attainments in recent years, has come to be called generalists. The Macaulay report Machiavelli report in 1854 laid emphasis on the superiority of generalists over the specialists. This was the basis and the philosophy on which the Indian civil service was constituted. This philosophy continued to hold good till independence. However, due to increased welfare functions of the government, Trevelyan and Macaulay philosophy has been questioned and challenged seriously. The main idea in the selection of the generalist civil service and the placement of its entrants to the high level positions in any department, including the secretariat, is that the intelligent young university graduates would occupy these positions with distinction without a formal in service training. Another idea behind the generalist civil service was that these young entrants would perform the functions of providing advice to the government in policy making, formulating decisions for execution of government policies, whichever be the subject of function of administration. The technical experts in the respective subjects would help in these tasks. Various points are put forward in favor of the generalists. They have a broad outlook and flexibility of approach to adjust themselves to any department and position at any level, and to reflect and judge on any issue in administration. As they shift the ability of the generalists to assimilate different experiences, functional, public and political, their ability to occupy higher position in department and post gets strengthened. Besides, it is argued that the generalists act as a mediator, an umpire between the expert and the politician. The people and the government, the pressure groups and the public interest represented by parliament, legislature and the political executive, and conflicting points of view and aspects. The generalists are said to know the minister's mind better than the specialists. They tone down the angularities and extremities of the positions taken by the technocrats or the specialists. The specialists, it is held, favor costly proposals which the generalists can size up. Arguments in favor of specialists. During the 19th century, when the generalist civil service was founded in Britain and India, highly specialized knowledge was not required required in administration, as its functions were limited to the maintenance of law and order and looking after regulatory activities. The general criticism of generalists is that they have not developed the essential professionalism or adequate knowledge in depth of the work of any department. Due to the absence of a specialized education or post-service training in the work of that department, this has resulted. It is pointed out in defective policy making and had made basic evaluation of the policies difficult. The methods adopted for execution of policies are also ineffective. Effective communication with the sources of expert advice in and outside the administration is not established because most of the policies and the decisions flowing from them are executed by specialists or officials under their charge. The generalists are away from the perception regarding the extent of the effective execution of the policies and the decisions and the reasons for it. The specialists feel that generalists misunderstand technical advice or do not obtain it at all. The generalists cannot undertake forward planning because they are not equipped with the necessary knowledge of the development in particular subjects like engineering, agriculture, education, health, etc. as they move from one department to another and even out of a department to a public enterprise or a university or an auxiliary body like National Book Trust or the National Council of Engineering, Educational Research and Training (NCRT). Further, the intelligent amateur theory underlying the constitution of the generalist civil service would not applicable to the recent times when the functions of administration have become complex, more technical, scientifically oriented and subject specific. The specialists advance their case for being placed on an equal footing with the generalists on various grounds. The shortcomings in the administration by the generalists are cited in their own favor. The chief merit of the specialists claimed by them for occupying the highest positions of headship of executive departments and secretaryship of secretariat departments in advance on the strength of their knowledge and experience of respective specialties. It is also actively canvassed by the specialists that on the one hand the generalists become better qualified to hold higher positions in different departments because they themselves have fashioned the system in their own favor, and on the other hand the specialists are deprived of occupying highest positions even though they are better equipped. Scientific training includes an objective spirit among the specialists which reduces the alleged functional bias in them. Nor are generalists completely free from personal bias in the course of administration. The charge on the specialists of not being cost conscious and of being too close to own department's clientele is answered with a similar argument. The dual hierarchical structures of the cadres of the generalists and specialists respectively not only mar administrative efficiency but also create discontent among the specialists. Easier and more cordial communication between them would result. Better expert advice from the specialists would be evoked. Career planning is necessary both for the generalists and the specialists in the interest of the development of both and the greater efficiency and effectiveness of the administrative system. Both have to be trained in the managerial functions and techniques. A common body of knowledge useful to both needs to be taught in the course of the post entry training. Better communication and cooperation between these two components of the administrative system have to be encouraged. In 1968, the Fulton Committee in UK recommended a greater role for specialists in administration. It favored fostering professionalism among the specialists through training in management and also specialization in subject matters. Recommendations of the Administrative Reforms Commission. The issue of the relationship of the personnel of the Indian administrative services with those of a specialist service occurs at both the level central as well as the state. The IAS is an all India service in the sense that its personnel are recruited and appointed by the central government but serves both the state and the central governments. The role of the IAS in the field administration in the states in providing manpower for appointment as district collectors and magistrates and development officers to the posts of Jila Parishad is also unique. In the Government of India, the members of IAS are appointed as secretaries, joint secretaries, and deputy secretaries to various departments after having a stint of service with the state governments as a deputy secretary or a secretary. They serve the Government of India on a tenure basis for say 5 years and revert to their respective states on completion of the tenure unless their tenure is extended. Prior to the publication of the report of the Administrative Reform Commission on Personnel Administration, April 1969, the specialists were rarely promoted to the posts of secretaries in the central or state governments. Besides, in the state governments, members of the IAS are also appointed as heads of departments, including technical ones like agriculture, animal husbandry, sales tax, etc., except police or engineering. The differences in pay scales of the IAS and the other services do exist, which add to the discontent among the members of specialist services such as Indian Audit and Accounts, Railways, etc. At the central and the agricultural, engineering and other services at the state level. There could be no two options about the main considerations for the formation of the Indian Administrative Service, as stated by a study team of the Administrative Reforms Commission. These are these are two. Number one, provide top administrative personnel to the central government as well as the state governments. Number two, provide opportunities to the central administrative machinery for constant touch with the realities and for contact with the people. Third, provide opportunities to the state administrative machinery for acquiring a wider outlook. Fourth, facilitate liaison between the center and the states. Fifth, bring about uniformity in the standards of administration. Sixth, ensure that services are free from communal or party basis. And seven, ensure contentment and sense of security in the services. The Administrative Reforms Commission mentioned that in view of complexities of the governmental functions today, it needs a diversity of skills for the administration of various programs of development that many of these skills are not available, and that these considerations have a great bearing on the staffing policies of the government. One of the major recommendations of the ARC was that all posts requiring close and intimate familiarity with subject matter, that is, a function, should be put into a separate cadre, that is, service. These posts should form a functional service and should therefore be earmarked for the officers of the service. However, the movement of persons at various levels in the functional service is not to be automatic but through careful selection at each level. The unified grading structure recommended by the ARC sought to help the process of selection. The ARC recognized, however, that there would be many posts which would not require subject matter specialization but would call for broad conceptual and managerial skills. These are the policy level posts of secretaries in the Secretariat. For these posts, no single functional service is uniquely qualified. These posts are very important, so the Commission has suggested that they should not be manned as at present but by a different method. The method recommended by the Commission is to hold an examination to all officers of higher services with 8 to 12 years of experience in government and test them for their suitability to occupy higher level policy positions. This examination should be designed to assess the candidate's capacity for communication, clarity of thought, overall managerial ability, power of analysis, and comprehension of current social, economic, and political issues. The ARC has suggested that after the officers are selected on the basis of this examination, they should be allotted to one of the 8 specialties mentioned by the Commission. According to their background and aptitude, these specialties are: number 1, personnel and manpower; number 2, economic administration, including planning; third, financial administration; fourth, agricultural administration; fifth, industrial administration; sixth, social and educational administration; seventh, internal security and defense; and eighth, general administration. After this allotment, the careers of these officers would be within the selected specialty, but there would be judicious job rotation of these officers in related areas. Criticisms could be offered on these categories of functional professionalization of the civil services in India at the higher policy making level, as also on the mode of examination to be held at the mid career of the civil servants for selections to the level. But the recommendations of the ARC on the matter ensured the preeminence of the generalist Indian administrative service as well as justice to the highly qualified and experienced among the specialists in respect of their claims to the higher level posts in policy making. Similar professionalization and mode of selection was suggested by the ARC at the state level. Bridging the gulf between the two, of late certain steps have been initiated towards inducting specialists into administrative positions both at center as well as the states. For example, the Department of Atomic Energy is headed by a nuclear scientist. Ministry of Law by a member belonging to the legal profession or service. Similarly, scientists preponderate in the scientific research departments. The Planning Commission is exclusively manned by specialists and professionals. There is another method in vogue of giving a specialist head of the department ex officio status of joint additional secretary to the government. For instance, at the union level, the members who are heads of operating departments are ex officio secretaries in the union ministry. At the state level too, specialists are appointed as secretaries, ex officio or in own right. In departments like law, public works, etc., the Director General of Indian Council of Agriculture Research is the ex officio secretary of the Department of Agricultural Research and Education in the Ministry of Agriculture. Similarly, the Director General of Council for Scientific and Industrial Research is ex officio secretary of Department of Scientific and Industrial Research in Ministry of Science and Technology. An independent personnel and administrative reforms department has been constituted at the center in accordance with another recommendation of the ARC. Similarly, imparting of training in managerial techniques and reforms in administration as suggested by the commission is underway, but the concept of overall career planning and development seems to have been stuck up. In the public enterprises, prior to the report of the ARC on public enterprises, government secretaries, most of whom were generalists, used to be appointed either in ex officio capacity as part-time chairman or managing directors or directors or a full-time substantive basis. On a full-time substantive basis. The recommendations of the ARC to discontinue the practice was accepted and implemented by the government. Another possible way out to bridge the existing gulf between the generalists and specialists could be the formation of any one of the following hierarchies, like number 1, separate hierarchy. The system is prevalent in Australia, Sweden, where there is common pay and greater respect for specialists. Parallel hierarchy. This is a system where a specialist will be working with a generalist, like for example, Director General will be working with Deputy Secretary Generalists. Joint hierarchy. Here both a generalist as well as specialist report jointly to a permanent secretary who is generalist. Unified hierarchy. This implies creation of a unified civil service merging both central and all India services. This requires common competitive examination of uniform standard and uniformity in emoluments and conditions of service. While in India no steps were taken to create such a service. In Pakistan in 1973, unified civil service was created, wherein all the services and cadres in their civil service were merged in one service. The generalist Indian administrative service, with all its shortcomings, have proved to be an asset to the administration both at the national and state level. Its alleged omniscience, overbearing outlook towards the specialists, its inadequate professionalism and outdated knowledge in specific and technological sectors of administration are known and have been discussed in scholarly works and current journals, magazines, and newspapers. But its national outlook has helped to keep the state administration into the national mainstream. Its integrated approach has kept the national administration alive to the requirements of fostering interrelations among different sectors of administration as well as between the center and the states. At the same time, the value of the specialist contribution and role in the administration at both the central and the state levels has to be appreciated. India has progressed tremendously in scientific, industrial, transport, communication, agricultural, educational, and other fields. The specialist's role in this multi-sided national progress and the administrative infrastructure and processes for it should be recognized. The complexion of administration is undergoing a change with the tasks getting more and more specialized in recent times. The discharge of functions by the administration in present time needs more professionalization. While in the USA, the public service places emphasis on some specialist inputs. Indian system modeled on the British pattern gave importance to generalism. But now the gap between the generalists and specialists is getting reduced through suitable measures. Now generally a freshly appointed officer of IAS shall gain experience in the field as well as in regulatory and welfare departments in the initial 11 to 12 years. In the next few years, opportunities are being made available to specialize in their areas of preference. Policy formulation and implementation are the key components of the administration. The contribution of generalists and specialists in this process cannot be assessed in rigid watertight compartments. The present times call for a blend of detailed knowledge of administrative activity as well as specialized knowledge along with proficiency in skills of organization and policy making. Summary. Thus, we can say that problem of smoothing the relationship between generalists and specialists is not an easy task. More efforts have been made to implement them properly. Many departments have tried to give a lot of incentives to the specialists, like appointing them as secretaries ex officio or in own right in the central secretariat and state secretariat. More developments towards this direction are underway. What has to be realized is that generalists and specialists both have very important role to play in administration and their contribution ought to be recognized.